I'd interviewed this man whose father had died, and he thought it was going to be a big mess. He didn't know anything about what his father was doing. And he walked into his father's house. He went to the computer, opened up the screen, and there was a folder, like a Microsoft Office folder that
Mm-hmm.
said death written in all capital letters.
Jeez.
And he double clicked the file icon, and everything he needed was in there.
Oh, wow. Do you want to be better with money, but dread the math? I get it. That's why this show is not focused on math, the markets, meme stocks, or even economic predictions. It is focused on how money fits into your daily life, from having healthy money conversations to caring for an aging parent. I'm Karen Coyne, certified financial planner professional and your host of Money Without Math. Join us for conversations that are practical, sometimes philosophical, and always fresh. Learn more about me at raymondjames.com/clarity, and be sure to subscribe. Caregivers provide in so many different ways, from shopping and preparing meals, cleaning, laundry, doctor's appointments, managing meds, and then the finances, paying routine bills, paying for care, managing assets, insurance claims, and so much more. Managing the finances can be tricky, even for a professional, and even for a professional who's super organized. Our guest today is a personal finance expert who shares what she learned in her journey caring for her mother. Beth Pinsker is a personal finance writer. She's a columnist for MarketWatch and a certified financial planner professional. She's also the author of My Mother's Money, a guide to financial caregiving, coming out just around the corner on November 4th. Welcome, Beth.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for sharing your very deeply personal story.
Yeah, very, very, you can't get more personal than that, I don't think.
No, I mean, combining caregiving and finances, end of life issues, it's very, very deeply personal.
Yeah, I'm always asking people to tell me their intimate financial details for my writing. And on this one, I, asked myself, and I, was able to give details that are hard to get from other people. And I thought people in this circumstance needed real numbers and real experiences. And so I was able to use my mother's real, not her real information, but like her real budget and, the real amount of her social security and things like that, because I thought it would be helpful to people. And not like the dollar balance of her bank account,
Right.
um, but talk about things in real terms, because so many times you get this information and it's just really general. And that's what I found when I went looking for answers, was just this really general gloss over of all the things you needed to do. And that wasn't helpful to me at all. I needed to know the nitty gritty of things. I needed to know how things really worked. Um, and so I'm trying to help people get through that stuff
And
with this book.
specifically with regards to the financial caregiving.
Yes, this is all the financial stuff. I leave the medical stuff and the psychological stuff to the experts in those lanes. My lane was, I understand the financial side of things, and I went through it, and I'm able to explain it to you in a way through my story that maybe some people will have a wake-up call and say, oh my God, I finally understand what this is all about. I understand why people keep telling me this is important now. It's not just some item on my to-do list. If I don't do step A, I'm going to end up at step W, and I'm going to be in big trouble. And so let's go back to step A and let's see if we can take care of some of these things.
Okay. So to level set, can you define what does that mean? What are you referring to? What is encompassed when you say financial caregiving?
Financial caregiving is everything you have to do to step into somebody else's adult financial shoes. When you have a legal adult, anybody over the age of 18, there are certain things that nobody else can do for them, sometimes even when you're married. But if you have an 18-year-old going off to college, I tried to make a doctor's appointment for my 18-year-old a few weeks ago, and they wouldn't let me
Hmm.
because he's a legal adult. And you can't do certain things for other legal adults. You can't go into their bank account. You can't pay their bills. You can't write their name on a check. You can't do some of these things. And so you have to prepare for an emergency when whoever that legal adult is can't do those things. And it's not just having the legal paperwork, you also have to have the wherewithal to know what they need done. We weren't prepared for this when my mom got sick, and hardly anybody is. My mom was 76 and she was a fully functioning human being on her own, and she didn't need any help. And so I had the power of attorney document, but I didn't know what bills she paid. I didn't know when she paid them. I didn't know how much money she had in her bank account. I didn't know, intricate details like that she paid her electric bill by calling into the electric company and making electronic payment every month, but she paid her, month or her quarterly maintenance for her apartment building with a check.
Mm,
Like nobody knows those things unless you're the person.
right.
But if that person gets sick and you have to take care of them, you have to know things like that besides having the legal authority to write the check or to go into the bank account and have access to certain things. And so there's a lot more to it than just having the right documents.
It's a lot of detective work.
It's a scavenger hunt, it's detective work, it's being a forensic accountant. Um, I would my mom had this habit of stashing cash in envelopes inside and around her office and her desk. And who knew? Like, well, that's not something you tell other people. And so every once in a while, I'd be reaching for something and I'd come across an envelope and she would have $100 stuffed in there. I'd be like, what's this for? I had no idea what was in her thinking.
Oh,
And she thought she was so careful about some things, like, how they say, like write down all your passwords for somebody.
mhm.
Well, she thought she had done that. She had an old check register and she would, scribble down whenever she changed a password in this old check register. And then she put the old check register with all the other check registers that she kept for some reason and in a drawer. And when I said, Mom, I need to, go into this account, what's your password? She's like, I don't remember my password. It's in the check register. And I would open up, it was just squiggles. It
Oh
was
gosh.
literally squiggles. And she thought she was keeping track of everything.
Mm.
And, so even somebody who doesn't have dementia, who doesn't have a problem, is trying their best. Financial caregiving is going in and taking care of all of those things, regardless of what state of disrepair they're in.
And you mentioned she already had a power of attorney document. So
Yeah.
she had done that when she was, I mean, you said she was healthy. So she had that done when she was relatively healthy and there was no issue on the horizon.
Yeah. This is where my financial training came in handy. As soon as my father died, he died 5 years before my mother. When he died, I said, there are things you need to take care of. And she listened to me
Mm,
because I was going through all this financial training, getting my certified financial planning uh, license. And I had been a retirement columnist for some time by then. And I tell this story in the book. I had written this column years before when I was at Reuters, and it was called What Should Be in Your Death File. And I wrote the story. I'd interviewed this man whose father had died, and he thought it was going to be a big mess. He didn't know anything about what his father was doing. And he walked into his father's house, he went to the computer, and he like opened up the screen, and there was a folder, like a Microsoft Office folder that
mm-hmm.
said death written in all capital
Oh,
letters.
jeez.
And he double clicked the file icon, and everything he needed was in there.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, so my article was like, everybody needs to do this for their loved ones. Like, you
Mm,
need a death file.
a death
And
file.
my mom had been reading her local newspaper in Florida and had started reading this article about this man who, went into his father's house and found, this folder on his computer. And she had started to cut it out to clip for me to show to me because she thought I'd be interested in it. And then she looked down and she saw that I had written it. Um, And so she called me on the phone. She's like, "This is a great article." But that stayed in her head. And when my father died, she knew that she had responsibilities as a single adult to take care of certain things. And so, I gave her all the information you need to find an estate attorney. Um, she went to the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, and she went on their search finder and found one near her, and she went and she got an estate plan. And this is one of the things where details matter. Like, I'm able to say, because it's my mother, and I'm her, she's deceased now, and I can say exactly how much she paid for that, exactly what she got for it, how much trouble it cost her to do it, like what the mental load was in order to get that done. And these are things that people just gloss over most of the time, and they say you should go to an estate attorney. It'll cost you several $1,000s. And that doesn't necessarily help people all that much, because they need to know real things. They need to know exact amounts. They need to know exactly what they're in for when they
Right.
go and they try to do some of this stuff. If you're going to send your mom off to see an estate attorney, you need to give her a preview of what she's going to have to think about and what she's going to have to decide. Because if you don't and she's overwhelmed, she's not going to do it.
That's right.
She's going to get there. They're going to give her some binder. They're going to tell her she has to decide between her children, who's going to be her executor and who's going to be the trustee, and how everything's going to get split up. And she's going to freeze, and she's not going to do anything at all.
Yes. Yeah. It can get easily very overwhelming. So, I mean, if someone finds, someone's listening today and they're finding themselves in this situation, or they're anticipating it, whether it's with their spouse or an aging parent or another, loved one, where they're going to be in this, not just caregiving role, but specifically looking to manage finances, what do you recommend as a next first step?
Well, the easiest thing to do is get that power of attorney and healthcare proxy done, because those are really standard documents, and you can download those from the internet. I helped a family with this recently, and we did it while we were sitting on the couch. It took 5 minutes. Like, you fill in some basic information. You don't have to make a whole lot of complicated decisions. You fill in the information. It asks you what to put in there, names, addresses. You print it out. You take it to a notary. Most banks have notaries. I live in Brooklyn. There are 5 notaries on my street.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it's that dense in notaries out there in the rest of the universe, but it shouldn't be that hard to find a notary. There are electronic notaries now. You can get a power of attorney notarized. That's only step one, though.
Right.
I equate going to a lawyer to get an estate plan done to going to see a doctor and having to fill out a medical form in the beginning of the relationship. It's just some basic information. You don't have to know everything. This is why you're hiring a professional. Like, you're not becoming a legal authority on trusts and estates when you go to have your estate plan done. And you don't even have to call it an estate plan. This is why I never use the term estate. This is not about you and your, fortune and your, mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. This is about the things you want to put down on paper, so that other people have the legal authority to take care of you, and so they know what your wishes are if something were to happen to you. If you were to, the power of attorney and the healthcare proxy are for before you die, and a will and a trust and a living will are for when you're dying and after you've died. And these are important things, and these are so that you don't leave a big mess behind for anybody else. These aren't about control or really splitting up everything. This is about your family not having a hard time.
Right. And as you mentioned, though, in your book, and as you just mentioned, so step one is you have the document. That's not too difficult to do, but it is also sometimes not easy to actually use the document.
No, it's not easy at all to use a document. I think this is a relatively modern phenomenon, that the banks are so cautious. I found that anybody my mom owed money to was perfectly happy for me to step in any capacity and pay them.
Mm.
Uh, Wherever my mom had accounts and I needed access to her money inside that system, it was like a brick wall. They are very, very careful about fraud and abuse of any sort, and they are sticklers for all the rules. And you just really have to know your rights. And my only solution to this at this point is to know your rights and to know when to stand your ground. And that's where the documents come into play. Like I had my mom's power of attorney. I went to the bank to enforce it. They said no. I said, you have to. They said no. I said, I'm not leaving until you do. Uh, they said, come back for an appointment. I'm like, all right, I'll come back for an appointment. I went back for the appointment. They said, no,
Oh
we
my
can't do this. I'm like,
gosh.
no, we're gonna do this. You're gonna
Wow.
get people on the phone and we're gonna make this happen. And I knew that my forms were valid and I knew what my rights were. And I want everybody else to know what their rights are. And if you have the right documents, then you have to stand your ground. The same thing goes for when you're in a hospital situation and they want to kick your loved one out and you think the loved one should stay longer. There are things that you can do to hold your ground and
Mhm.
stamp your feet and, get the attention that your loved one needs and advocate on their behalf. But you have to know what your rights are and you have to be within justified abstinence, basically.
Oh my goodness. Well, and then hope that your parents have start or loved one has, maybe started to consolidate and doesn't have 10 different financial institutions that they're dealing with, which is not
Yeah,
uncommon, right? We see this where they might have a brokerage account or two, the old retirement account, several bank accounts, a
yeah,
CD over here, a money market over there. And so now you're going
yeah,
through the exercise that you just described at each and every institution potentially.
yeah. I'm helping a friend through this now, and his parents have six different credit cards, and he needs to close them out. And he can't close them out unless he gets in touch with all of them. He has sent the documents out, and one will accept the document and one will reject the document. They're the same document.
Oh my gosh.
And then one wanted originals. Well, he's got to send them to six different places. He doesn't have six originals. If he sends the original to one bank, what are the other banks going to say? Like it's the ridiculous hoop jumping.
Oh my gosh. It's so much, so much. But I mean, I do think that as whether it's children again or as spouses, if we see the anticipate that this might be something that we're dealing with a long way, it does make the sense to, okay, can we go from three bank accounts to maybe can we just deal with one institution if it makes sense? Um, are there
Yeah, I mean,
other
I'm trying to do that now with
mm,
myself. Like I saw what it was like for me to deal with my mother's finances, and I'm looking at my own system and I'm saying this is too complicated for anybody else to follow. I can follow it. I know what I'm doing, but nobody else could follow my roadmap. And I need to make this so that it's easier for other people should
right?
something happen to them.
Yes, like a breadcrumb trail.
Exactly.
What do you find often gets overlooked, whether it's, from your own personal experience with your mom or from what you've heard from some of your readers?
There are so many things that go overlooked. Everybody misses something. I
Mm.
have not run into anybody who's like, "Oh, this is great." I talked to this one very, very prominent estate attorney for my book, and um, like the head of organizations for estate attorneys. Like he, and when his mother got sick, he had it all worked out. Um, and then he got to the point where after his mother died, they were trying to transfer an IRA account that he and his siblings had inherited. And the bank wanted a medallion stamp.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Most people haven't even heard of a medallion stamp, let alone know what to do about it. He could not get the medallion stamp done. This is a highly qualified, professional who literally knows everything, and he couldn't get that done. I talked to a wealth manager who's head of wealth management at one of the big firms, when his mother needed help with Medicare after his father died, and she had to switch from his father's plan to her own plan, he had asked clients. He had to ask his clients what they do about going on Medicare because he wasn't of that age yet and hadn't experienced it and didn't know how to help his mother in a functional way. He
Right.
could explain to you, how Medicare pays and everything about the Medicare system,
Totally
but
different.
in a functional way of the nitty gritty when it gets down to, I need help doing X, Y, or Z, it's really hard to do some of these things. And, like there's no guidebook out there until my book comes along.
Right.
Um, like there was no information for me out there that told you, here's exactly how obstinate you can be, in this process. Here's where the line is that you do not cross. Here's how you say the words to the person on the other end in the IRA department who can't figure out how to transfer the accounts because something in the back end computer system is not matching up, which I also faced. When I had to transfer my parents' IRA assets after my mother passed, my mother had inherited IRA assets from my father, and then my mother died, and they had to go to me and my brother, and the between two companies the back ends didn't match up,
Oh boy.
and we couldn't figure it out, and I had to call every day for months and be like, this money still hasn't transferred over. You have a tracker, it just shows red, and every day I called. Every day I was like, hey Ryan, it's me again. Um, but there's no rule book. There's no like training in CFP land that tells you how to do any of that.
No, there's not.
This is like human experience that,
Mm.
when you're moving money around, you're going to experience problems. Here's what some of those problems can be, like this is how navigate through that.
Right. To create awareness of some of the roadblocks that you might run into that you
Yeah.
don't even know exist. And I think language can be one of those, the difference between saying transfer and withdraw. Someone might
Yeah.
mean transfer, but if they say, well, I'm trying to take my mom's money out of this account, meaning transfer, but perhaps they inadvertently request a distribution. And if the person, on the operational back end isn't asking follow up questions to say, are you sure, do you mean this? Then that could be a really expensive communication disaster.
Absolutely. There are all sorts of things that I talk about that, there's just like this long list, which is why I tell it as a story, because if you just made a long list of these things, it would be intolerable. Um, because there are just too many, you can't keep them all in your head at the same time. And so that's why, what I've learned as a journalist is that you have to tell people stories.
Mhm.
You have to get them to relate on a human level to what's going on, or they're just not going to get it. And, we all love stories. We all can relate in that way. And so, you know, all of this stuff that's going on with all this financial stuff is happening at the same time that somebody you love is sick or is dying or has died. And
Mhm.
it's a really hard time to have to go through any of that. And so, my narrative starts when I got a call from my mother, like so many people jump into this sort of sideways. My mom calls, she says, I'm going to have surgery on November 15th. Can you come help me out? And I don't know anything about what I'm getting into. I don't know how much help she's going to need. I don't know how long she's going to be incapacitated. I don't know what's going to happen, but she's my mother. So, you say yes in that circumstance and you go and you do the best you can. And so my journey starts there. Like so many people, they get a call, dad had a heart attack, Aunt Libby had a stroke, somebody fell, somebody got in a car accident. You never know what it's going to be, or when it's going to happen. And most of us at the end of the day we go and we help and we do whatever we can. And so my journey started there, and then there were complication after complication after complication, and she didn't make it through the end of those complications. And so we had about 8 months or so of her being sick, and then she passed away. And then I had to start the estate settling process, which is a whole another part of this. But that if you don't know what's coming, and if you can't foresee that coming, and you don't do certain things, it's harder than if you do those things, right?
Would
So
you
the
like,
same
what
with
are you
the
thinking when you say that?
wills and trusts and organizing accounts, and something as simple as knowing if there's life insurance and
Mm,
where it is,
right.
and how, like, I talked to people, this woman for my book, who thought she knew everything about her parents stuff, right? They were in nursing homes for long periods of time. She'd taken over everything. She was a financial professional. It wasn't until they were gone and she was going through the paperwork that she found a life insurance policy that she did not know her mother had, that was taken out when her mother was 10 years old, and her mother died when she was in her 90s.
Wow.
And it was on paper. No mention of this would exist otherwise. So if you don't know where stuff is, and that it exists, like, you're gonna miss it. Like,
Right.
you could have missed out on thousands of dollars on this life insurance policy just because
Ugh,
she didn't know about it.
right. Yes.
And so you just, like, knowing where stuff is, keeping records that somebody can navigate through. um there's a lot that you can do to make it easier for people on when you're still alive, if you're the person who's going to need care later on. And if you're the person taking care of somebody else, there's a lot you can do ahead of time to have conversations with them, to know what they want. Even something as simple as, I talk in the book about our family candlesticks. So one item that, like, if you said there was going to be a fight over something,
Hmm.
if the candlesticks were up for grabs, everybody would have wanted the candlesticks. It's the only thing of value emotionally, um, in our family, right? They came over with somebody in somebody's skirt leg, in the 1800s, and they're special, you
Mm.
know. But they're one item that's special, and only one person can get it at the end. And so if my mom had not designated a pathway for who got the candlesticks, we probably would have thought about them.
Oh, no doubt.
I wanted them. Certainly, my brother wanted them. All
Mm.
my cousins would want them. Like, we're 4 or 5 generations out from the origin of these candlesticks. There are lots of people in line to inherit them.
Hmm.
If it's an open door. Um, but, like, so my family solved this problem by always passing the candlesticks to the oldest daughter.
Hmm.
And my grandmother was the oldest daughter, and then my mom was the oldest daughter, and then I'm the oldest daughter. And so they went to me. They're sitting upstairs in my living room, and something, as simple as my mom saying, well, this is how our family does this, prevented a fight.
Yes.
She didn't write it down anywhere. We just all knew that in our family, the candlesticks go to the oldest daughter.
Now, do you have children?
I have children, and it's all going to be much more complicated because, we don't think about gender the same way anymore, right?
Mm.
So, and I don't know, like, it seems like everybody in our family line always had an oldest daughter to give them to, and like, that doesn't happen in every generation. I don't even know if my kids will have kids. Like, what's going to happen after one of them gets the candlesticks? If they don't have children, like, who are they going to go to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it gets, when you get that far down the line, it's really hard. And some people do this with a vacation home.
Yeah.
um like, the parents have this cherished vacation home and they think that the kids want it. But if there's more than one kid, or more than one grandkid, or whatever down the line, it gets complicated. It's hard stuff.
Oh my gosh.
um,
Yes, absolutely. But you did say
it's not just fun.
something that, basically is to start the conversation.
Because if you don't have that conversation, then nobody knows. And when nobody knows, that's when they fight. If you don't explain it or have some rationale for it, then stuff can get ugly. And I've heard lots of bad stories about that. And some people think it's inevitable. Like I talk to some people and I'm like, well, maybe you could try this or try that. And they're like, nope, we're not going anywhere.
Hmm.
And to be honest, in some families, there are people who are intractable. Like not everybody's nice.
Right.
And sometimes you're not going to be able to avoid a fight. But I think if you're the one who is nice, you know where your limit is. You know what you're willing to fight for and is worth it to you. And, at the end of the day, I would never have gone to the mat over candlesticks, right?
Sure.
We would have had one of those like passive aggressive kind of like, I want them, but if you really want them, and they're like, no, if they're really important to you, we would have done, an hour or two of passive aggressiveness. The candlesticks come from my grandmother's side of the family. So he just went along with the, the oldest daughter trope, which made the candlesticks in his family. And my uncle ended up getting his college ring,
Hmm.
and um because that went down the male line in the old days. And
Yeah.
so that is in my cousin's family, and that's an artifact that's special. There's only one of it. It belonged to my grandfather, and like people have this kind of stuff in their families.
Oh, definitely.
And it sounds like there's got to be a solution somehow, but but people fight. um One
Yes.
lawyer was telling me that he sets stuff up sometimes as like a round robin lottery.
Yes.
um
I,
there's A, B, C for each kid, and A picks first, and then B picks, and then C picks, then C picks, and B picks, and A picks, and you keep going until there's no more stuff.
yep.
um and there are all sorts of ways to do it, but somebody's got to figure this stuff out.
Someone's got
You're
it.
either going to
Yes.
pay a lawyer. Yeah, I mean, a lawyer is going to figure it out for you, and you're going to pay them a lot of money, if mom and dad don't leave any wishes, or a judge is going to figure it out, and a judge is going to be just brutal about it, right?
Yes.
Like,
Right. So hopefully you can work amongst yourselves to agree to be friendly and make your own agreement so that it doesn't have to go that route.
yes, because it's just emotionally horrible and expensive. Like the worst combination of things. It's
Y-
torture, and it's going to cost you a lot of money.
You're absolutely right. Yes. Beth, I know we could talk so much. I mean, your book covers so much about this journey and some of the considerations, like you said, through story, not just, dry lists of to dos and considerations. But since we only have a few minutes left, is there anything that we didn't get to that, you really want to leave listeners with in terms of, something actionable that they can do now or think about to prepare when they find themselves in this role?
Well, one thing is I wanted this to be sort of an ongoing conversation with people, and so I have a place on my website to ask questions, and I will either answer them in posts on my website or in my column at Market Watch. And we do this on a regular basis, and we try to help people, through some of these things, because I couldn't get to everything in the book, and you couldn't. I mean, there's just every permutation of every situation is out there, and you can't get to everything, but everybody needs their own help. And so if you have a situation and you want to ask a question, you can go to bethpinsker.com, and I will do my best to try to help out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Beth. We will share that in the show notes, along with, of course, a link to the book, which will probably be available by the time this episode is released. So,
At booksellers
at
everywhere.
booksellers everywhere, it's your favorite booksellers. So, Beth, thank you so much for joining and for sharing
Thank you.
your story. And again, this deeply personal journey that you've been on that I know will help so many.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for listening. Please follow us on Spotify if you're not already so you don't miss any future episodes. We'd also love for you to rate the show while you're there. Connect with us on social. Search Karen Coyne CFP on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. If you have feedback or if we can be of service in any way, please let us know. And now for the standard disclosures. Opinions expressed are those of Karen Coyne and not those of Raymond James Financial Services or Raymond James. Securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors Incorporated. Clarity Planning is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services. Karen Coyne Financial Advisor is located at 12920 Connemara Drive, Suite 202, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21742. Phone 301-739-7002. This material does not purport to be a complete description of the securities, markets, or developments referred to in this material and does not constitute a recommendation. Raymond James is not affiliated with nor endorses MarketWatch or My Mother's Money.